Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Caithness Amateur Dram Antique Society tasting. I'm doing a series on Lost Distilleries and trying to find whiskies to represent that Lost Distillery. And this evening, I'm going to be looking at Rosebank. Specifically, in this case, it's a Douglas Laing bottling, the Old Malt Cask by Douglas Laing, Rosebank 1990 vintage, 18-year-old at 50%. So Rosebank Distillery, uh, it's quite iconic, quite legendary as well, and quite distinct. Many things can be said about this famed Lowland distillery, which has recently risen from the ashes. It was founded in 1840, although distilling at the site dates to 1798. It's always been an integral character in the history of the Lowland whisky region and the wider story of whisky production in Scotland. It was built on the banks of the Forth and Clyde Canal that connects Glasgow to Edinburgh. In fact, the distillery takes its name from the roses which grew alongside the canal. The distillery was founded in 1840 by James Rankin, a local wine merchant, and at the time it was founded, the banks of the Forth and Clyde Canal were covered with roses, so that's where the name Rosebank comes from. It changed owners several times until its closure in 1993. Then in 2017, Ian MacLeod Distillers bought the distillery and announced plans to reopen it. The demolished parts and buildings were rebuilt between 2019 and 2023 to once again produce lowland whisky from Rosebank, and they've been producing since 2023. After it was founded, Rosebank had a very consistent history up until the early 90s and only witnessed a brief wartime hiatus in production, like many other distilleries. Its spirit was highly prized by blenders and often perceived as the greatest of all lowland distilleries. However, with the advancement of transportation, cars, roads, the Forth and Clyde Canal largely fell into disuse. During what was once a production and logistical, well, it turned what was once a production and logistical strength of the distillery into a perceived locational weakness. And tragically, the distillery was mothballed in 1993 due to an estimated 2 million upgrade being required, coupled with the fact that United Distillers, now Diageo, allegedly felt that Glenkinchie Distillery would be a better lowland representative in their classic malt selection due to Glenkinchie's perceived tourism potential and proximity to Edinburgh. But in 2017, Ian MacLeod Distillers of Glengoyne and Tamdhu fame acquired both the Rosebank brand from Diageo and purchased the site of the distillery from British Waterways and announced the reopening of Rosebank Distillery. And so on the 19th of July 2026, the first cask of new Rosebank spirit will officially become whisky. The three new stills from Forsyth have been made to be exactly like the old stills. The distillery's old stills were stolen by copper thieves in 2008. And the popular Rosebank style is produced by a combination of triple distillation and condensation in worm tubs. The first step in the processing of malted barley begins with a mill, but not just any mill, because Rosebank is the proud owner of a bobby mill that has been extensively restored. Originally, it came from Port Ellen on Islay, and it was installed at Rosebank in 1936. There are 8 traditional wood washbacks made from Douglas oak at Rosebank. Many distilleries today are opting for stainless steel washbacks, which are obviously easier to maintain and clean. Each of the washbacks holds 15,000 litres, and the finished beer then has an alcohol content of around 8%. The quality of Rosebank whisky was no secret to the blenders, and so for a long time virtually all the production went into the blending industry. And today there are very few single malts from the days before closure. Ian MacLeod's have released a 30-year-old and a 31-year-old, I think, in fancy packaging and with a very fancy price, somewhere in the region of £2,000 a bottle. Very limited single cask bottlings. But they began producing new make again in 2023, almost 30 years to the day after its premature closure. We'll have to wait a little longer for the first new whisky. Of course, it's unpeated, triple distilled lowland single malt. The new make spirit of Rosebank is surprisingly delicate. It opens with soft floral notes. Think fresh lilies and rose petals. There's a touch of citrus peel that invites you in, and that's balanced by an elegant, almost mineral freshness. The mouthfeel is smooth and light due to the triple distilled process, and it offers on the palate a clear sweetness with subtle fruity notes such as pear and green apple. And the finish is crisp and short, so showing just a hint of hint malt and light cereal notes. So Whiskey Tonight comes from a 3CL sample that I got from the Malt Library, and with that you get some tasting notes, and they're very useful to guide you on your way. And so this is a Rosebank old malt cask Douglas Laing bottling, 1990 vintage, 18-year-old, and it's a single cask Rosebank that spent 18 years maturing in a refill butt, cask number 4655, before being bottled in 2008 by Douglas Laing as part of the old malt cask range. Unlike all old malt cask releases, this was bottled at 50% ABV, or as Douglas Laing describes it, the golden strength. It was distilled at the sadly defunct Rosebank Distillery in February 1990 and aged for 18 years. And it was a release of 672 bottles. So let's see where we have here. So, very pale colour, you can see. I've had Rosebank before. It was the old flora and fauna. I think it was a 12-year-old, and I really enjoyed it. I think Rosebank back when I was a young man was one of my favourite whiskies. And it's got quite a thin tide line, not much viscosity. But it has a rich bouquet. Lychee, Concord pear skins, jasmine, and it's got sort of mahogany flooring, icing sugar, and subtle crushed mint. It's fruity, particularly on tangy citrus. There's notes of cut grass, tin nectarines, mandarins, bit of pepper and sweetness. It's quite fresh, fruity, a bit winey. There's flowers, sweetish grapefruit. It's very fresh. Honey sprinkled barley. It's light, citrusy and floral, just as I remember it. With some pollen and a gentle beeswax. Hints of lavender as well, but it's not soapy at all. And there's some lovely gooseberry and a few herbal accents to add depth. Very enticing. Let's try the mouth. And there's prominent floral notes, lavender oil, sweet apples, almond croissant, pine nuts. It's quite leafy, malt loaf, rounded with a medium body. And there's notes of sweet fruit, orange, hints of oak and apple blossom and toffee. It's quite fresh. That's a sweetish fruitiness, but there's malt, spices, and some flowers there. It's sweet and creamy with a generous honey, fruit marmalade, and there's spices, cinnamon, pepper, and a slight waxy edge, and it fades to sort of milk chocolate and herbs. And on the finish, dry ginger, bitter lemons, cardamom, and there's a fading licorice, toffee, fruit, floral, spices. Hey, a bit of oak. It's quite fresh with a bit of sweetness. I'll try half a ml of water in this. And it's still got floral notes with a bit of mint, chamomile, and eucalyptus. And citrus zest and a prickly pear like sweetness. Sweet and fruity. Peach, wood spices, and a little tobacco. And still quite floral. And I'm starting to see a little bit of Scotch mist coming in there. Sorry about this. The camera's away to the ceiling. Yeah, just a little bit of Scotch mist coming in there. Lovely to see you. Try the mouth. It's quite full, but it's still a soft start. And again, it's very floral. Some citrus, and overall very delicate and spicy. Sweet, fruity peach, red fruits, some wood, spices, a little cinnamon, and a little citrus. And the finish is dry, medium length, florality, warming hints of spicy oak, and slowly drying. This is a fantastic Rosebank, with all the rich floral and meadow bouquet notes you'd expect and I remember from the Flora and Fauna series. And it's got a thick honey coating texture. It's a real treat indeed. And it doesn't seem 18 years old, it's very clean and sweet. It's maybe not the most complex whisky, but it's perfectly flawless and faultless. Thank you for listening.